Ready in virtual land? Right. That was perfect timing. All right, I'd like to call to order a regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Goshen Central School District being held on Monday, February 3rd, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. in the District Administration Building.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I need a motion for executive session. Brett? All there? Opposed? All right. Be it resolved that the Board of Education will enter into executive session with the intent to reconvene the business portion of the meeting for discussions related to the employment history of a particular person or persons. All those in favor? Opposed? Nobody. reconvene the meeting. John and Billy, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you, everybody. Moving on to our next item, any privilege of floor signups? Thank you, Billy. All right, moving on, there's not much to report on from my end this evening, just policy committee team just keeps on meeting. Seems to be the end of this report. So we'll move on from there to our student representative report, Francesca Scarl.
Hi, good evening. At Goshen High School, there are a few important events coming up. On February 6th, there will be a CTEC parent presentation at 7 p.m., which will be held virtually. This is a great opportunity for families to learn more about career and technical education opportunities. From February 10th to the 13th, GHS will be celebrating Kindness Week. This is a wonderful time for students to spread positivity. Additionally, I would like to congratulate the Science Olympiad team who competed at their regional competition on February 1st. The team performed exceptionally well, bringing home 5 medals. Congratulations. At the middle school, there are no major updates. And for GIS, they are launching an exciting new initiative called the Mobile Maps Wall. This program rewards 5th grade students who showed growth on their recent maps assessments with fun prizes. This is a great way to recognize students' hard work. Additionally, at SAS, an after-school art program will begin tomorrow. There are limited spots available, so if families are interested, they can sign up on the SAS PTO Facebook page. That concludes our report. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Francesca. It's nice to hear you give an overview of all the buildings. It's really great. Thank you for doing it. All right, moving on to our next item here. Do we have any board member, committee, legislative, or OXPA updates from anyone?
Just on the OXPA front, so we are kind of right in between 2 meetings. The meetings this time of year are very close together because of the breaks. So the last meeting was the Middletown School District gave a presentation on cell phone use and the upcoming legislation regarding the ban. I did ask for a copy of the presentation. I haven't gotten it yet, so once I get it, I'll distribute it to all of you guys so you can review it as well. And then we have another meeting on Wednesday this week. So I think that was it.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay, very good. On tonight's agenda, you'll see all the policies that are going on the first reading and also the second readings. There's quite a bit in there. So you can find that on your paperwork. And everybody have time to read through that on their own? Okay. Very good. So we'll move past policy readings. Now to our next agenda item, the superintendent's report. Dr. Curtis Coates.
Thank you very much. So on the packet that was sent, it is an exciting time of the year where we start to think about the calendar for the new school year. One thing I did not include, I apologize, is the current school calendar for you to do crosswalk. So I'll describe both versions A and version B to you. Version A is an exact replica, if you will, of the proposed Orange Ulster BOCES calendar, with the exception of the fact that we added the half day before Thanksgiving on the 26th. Couple of stark differences on version A between this year and that proposal. It does not have the day off after Easter Sunday, and it does not have the Friday off before Memorial Day, so it's only one day there. And again, I'll point out a difference in both versions on A and B. The 2024-2025 version has approved 184 instructional days with 2 conference days for a total of 186 days. The proposal for 2025-26 has 185 plus 2 conference days, giving us 1 more day leeway, if you will. On version B, knowing that we have included the Monday after Easter off, I asked Ms. Farrell to move the 18th of February, which is the day after the Lunar New Year in the new calendar, down to the Sunday after. And then it still leaves the half day, the day before half day before Thanksgiving on November 26th, but does not have off the Friday before Memorial Day weekend. And again, you do have that 1 day leeway to play with. If you wanted to add another day off, you could. I know in the past we've had conversations on professional development time for teachers. We could talk about a spring professional development day if you wanted me to research that with principals further. But those are the two versions that we did put together for purposes of conversation this evening. Was there, if there's any questions I can address or anything that you want me to look into for next week? Next meeting, rather, not next week. So.
All right, who's first? Somebody go.
I guess I'll go first. Looking at these, I do believe, I think it's version B. To me, it looks a little bit, when you're looking at the February break, as nice as it is to have that week off, we're not looking to have that full week off. Coming to school for 2 days, I feel might not be as advantageous. So I almost feel like it might be better to have that day after the Easter break, as opposed to having 3 days off in February, bringing students in for 2 days. I think at the upper grades, you're probably not going to full attendance at the high school. A couple more challenges for teachers in that respect. Just my 2 cents.
Mhm.
I do understand what Mr. Castle is saying. I just think for families that got used to having the February break and having vacation time there, it does give the option to still take that opportunity to have an extended break. While it doesn't give the full week, it does give a break there that you're getting the December and January break, February break. March is a little long, and then you get to spring break. So I think I see the benefit of version A. Also, that version A goes along with the BOCES calendar, which I think is always helpful.
If I could add also, we did research pretty extensively, just for my own knowledge, the Lunar New Year, making sure that there wasn't anything that spilled over into the next day. There is not. It sits as an isolated holiday on that specific day. So having the next day as a regular attendance day is not a problem.
Then there's the middle option, find 2 more additional days and get the full week off. No, I don't know where that would be taken from, but yeah, I think the first 2 options are, I do think aligning with both as closely as we can makes a lot of sense. Anybody else have feedback? Anybody else have feedback on that?
Sure, I'll add my 2 cents as well, and I think it seems like butting heads here. We have the people who want a vacation for that week or more, more school. And I agree with Billy that in version B, a 3-day school week is I think more advantageous for learning than a 2-day work week. And I think it just depends what you want to do. And I agree that probably some of the older kids will probably still take that vacation and be on those 2 days anyway.
Or 3.
Am I correct in recalling that in times past when we didn't have a full 2 weeks during the Christmas, New Year's season, that typically there was more of a full week in February, and that kind of drove
This
those
year,
extra
this
days
year was
there?
the first year, I think, in a while that we didn't have that full week off, and I guess that was the point I was gonna make, and not to interrupt you, but to the 2-day, 3-day thing that, not to get lost in, to be honest, but the day after Easter, I do worry we've already established the precedent, but that's not a week off now, where people book vacations a year in advance, and if somebody has booked a vacation for next spring break in anticipation of returning and having that Monday available to them, as we've had, I think, for a lot of years now. I know there has to be a first year always, and I want to give a disclaimer, I do not have vacation booked, so. But I just think that, that historically, Dr. Coase, maybe you know better than me, when was the last time we had school on that Monday?
It's been at least 4 to 5 years, if not.
Gotcha.
I know that Mr. Connor had listened pretty closely to the community on that. We had some flexibility. We were able to add that day, so it's easily been 4 to 5 years.
And then-
that's been the standing holiday.
In regards to the Friday before Memorial Day, which is one I hate to see go away. Is it fair to say that if we weren't to use our allotment of snow days, that would be the
Correct.
first one back on the calendar?
So there are some contractual obligations that if we stick with a model of 185 days, there are days that essentially that we usually work to get back and it could be added back.
Thank you.
I would just say I would lean towards dispersion date, mainly because of the Monday after. I just think that that's a time when people have anticipated being off. That's just my opinion, so I would lean towards B.
Just so I'm clear as well, version B with the 185 and leave that till the spring as potential to give it back, or look also at the day before Memorial Day. We could add it in, or we could just leave, it, because we're at version B is 185 plus 2, this year we were at 184 plus 2. So we could leave that and address it in the spring, or we could add it to the calendar.
So just a soft overview, how many folks are in favor of version B that only has the 2 days off, the 16th and 17th in February, leaving the Monday after Easter on? And then there's the flexibility to have the Friday before Memorial Day, because it's the 185, version B.
That's this year's next.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a question
Yeah.
before we go on which version? Just to
Well, just
clarify.
as.
Yeah, still just,
Yep.
before we straw poll here.
Yeah.
So version B with the 2 days has an additional day scheduled than we had this year.
Correct, so we
So-
have 184.
Could we live in the world where we have 184 days and we have the 3 days off that, like everybody, we got our birthday and Christmas on the
Yeah,
same
we
day
can
here,
both.
like everybody gets what they want?
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
Yes.
No,
Can we have-
so our calendar this year had 184 plus 2 scheduled. This version has 185 plus 2, and the board's split is over three days off that week or day after Easter off. And I said, can't we just have both and live in the same world where we have 184 plus 2?
Just use that as a
Yes.
pullback for.
And then we're all agreed that
So
the
you're
first
talking February though?
February,
So
correct.
the only risk of a February day is,
It's not.
and I'm not even gonna say snow anymore, you could be.
Yeah, sure, I know, yeah.
Emergency closing days in the fall, you could have floods in the spring. You're more likely to use a day in the winter, and that's purely selfishly from a superintendent's perspective. Having that little bit of flexibility is nice if you have a tough winter, or if you even have a bad
Understood.
fall.
So I guess in that vein, I would say that whether we have the Friday before Memorial Day scheduled off or scheduled on, as long as we're in agreement that that day is dependent on snow days. Whichever way you wanna put it on the equation, it's scheduled off and we lose it if we use too many, or it's scheduled on and we get it if it's.
If you put it into the calendar in February, once you're off, it's gone. Then you're talking about having.
No, that's what I'm saying, like,
You're
you want February.
Leave
I'm talking
it
about-
at 185 and 2 and
Yeah.
float it, and then if you haven't used your days, you can give it off.
For Memorial Day.
Well, could we just put it on for the Friday for Memorial Day?
Of course, and then if you're,
I guess what worries me about that is if somebody books travel and then.
But you know, it'll be on the
Well-
calendar, this is the anticipated date of when those
Correct.
dates come back, and then that's at your own risk.
right, if you look at the bottom, we've already got it red on there, what the first date of the
Yeah.
back is.
Okay.
That gets
Fair
listed
enough,
for you,
yeah.
so you know which ones are
Yeah,
happiest days.
Absolutely,
Just this way then, cause May is gonna be a long month for people.
present company included.
So,
B and add the, one day, the 22nd.
I'm still going with A, but it's okay. We don't all have to always agree.
Usually on this, we usually don't.
Yeah.
So draft up a version of B with one less day. Put it the Friday off for Memorial Day.
With an asterisk.
So then February only has the 2 days off, not 3. Right, so how many folks are in favor of that?
Includes Easter Monday.
Right, that includes the Easter Monday. I'm in favor of that, you're in favor of that.
I think it's everybody but Ashley.
What did you say?
It's
3 days in February,
2 days.
2 in favor,
2 days off in February.
only 2 days in February.
And so we get into this.
The Monday after
And-
Easter.
and
Yes.
We call it
keep-
version B.
You keep
It's
the,
version
you keep the
Billy.
Monday after.
I don't have any vacation
Yeah.
planned yet.
It's very ironic that A.
Sharon.
I'm just saying,
Okay, so I think we're,
yeah.
the majority is in agreement, B with the modification for. Okay,
Very good, we'll have that ready for approval at the next meeting.
all right, great, thank you.
So the next item is, I wanted to talk about a program that we're getting ready to put out to the community, hopefully next week. It is time where we now respond to the cell phone survey that we did. So right before the winter recess, we had put out both digitally and in our newsletter, a cell phone community feedback form, to which we received approximately 396 responses. I will say, looking at the data, it is certainly showing that opinions are split. I think there are some that feel very strongly that cell phones are a distraction, some where they would have concerns over communication with their students during the day. And we did have some people that were also interested in attending a forum. So we are going to set up a forum that basically addresses 3 buckets of this concern. Number one is, as we all know, Governor Hochul has pending legislation that she would like to introduce that would introduce a ban, but has also talked about a large amount of local flexibility and local control and what that may look like. So the first bucket, if you will, that we would like to ask those that are interested in taking part in is, what would an addition to the code of conduct look like, and helping to have us draft something that we could present to the board for consideration at, if this legislation goes into a place, what might the board consider for that to happen? The second is really focused around student engagement. I think a large part of the answer to this needs to be, especially with our upper class students, potentially our middle schoolers, and even as young as our 5th graders, do they see it as an issue? And if so, how can they help to solve this issue at the same time? We need that student voice in really thinking proactively and progressively on how we can address this moving forward. And then the last part really focuses around the governor's intent to have local control within this legislation, and allowing people to have a voice in advocacy, that if there was a small group that wanted to work together to put together an advocacy letter to send to the governor, why we feel strongly about local control and what that might look like for us here in Goshen. So we hope to get that out sometime next week, get the meeting scheduled, and invite those that said that they were willing to participate into meetings. We will likely schedule that in one of the buildings, just based sheer on the numbers of those responded. Of the 396 that responded, about 180 said that they would be willing to and would like to participate in an open forum. So even if 100 of those still show up, it's still a lot of people to have in this room. We want to make sure that we have space to work together with people. But again, we hope to get that out next week. Finally, it is time for budget. So I'm going to ask Mr. Carter and Ms. Lamoran to join me at the podium. This will be the first glance, if you will, at our instructional budget. So what we have focused on tonight is what I would like to affectionately refer to as the 10,000-foot overview of the instructional portion of the budget. As you are aware, the governor has released her executive proposal on what the foundation aid runs will look like and what the budget runs will look like. We need to fit that into where do we stand now. So not only are we going to speak specifically about some of the instructional proposals, we're also going to address for you the revenue side of the budget tonight as well, because we are going to need to ask for the board some feedback on some of the work that we need to do moving forward on the budget. So I'm going to move over with Ms. Lamoran with Mr. Carter so we can get started on tonight's presentation.
Thank you. Good evening. So tonight is presentation number 3 of our budget development process. We will be doing another presentation in March on the 4th at the board meeting. And then on April 22nd, we hope to have the finalized budget prepared for the board to adopt, as well as approve the property tax report card. And on May 12th, we have the public budget hearing, and the annual vote is on May 20th this year. So the instructional section of the budget is still a work in progress, and it's very early in the process. For example, I had some changes for the non-instructional side come in late Friday afternoon. So those changes aren't reflected here. So just as an example, we're still working on this. We have 5 sections listed up above, and throughout each of these 5 sections, your typical expenditures are salaries, supplies, contractual items such as tuition, BOCES services you'll find throughout each of these, and textbooks, technology such as software and equipment. We have curriculum development and supervision. This is where you'll find the assistant superintendent for curriculum, technology, and personnel, and all of the expenditures to maintain his office, such as his administrative assistant salaries, their supplies, etc. And also we have the supervision for the buildings. We have building principals, assistant principals, all of their clerical help, and all of the costs for maintaining their offices, as well as our directors for PPS, the assistant director for PPS, and our athletic director and their clerical help. Teaching regular school is where the bulk of our instructional budget is spent, and that is for the direct instruction of students. Everything related to that includes teacher salaries and assistants and aides, all of the textbooks, supplies, and contractual items needed to run the school for teaching. Special apportionment, we have our special education section of the budget here, as well as English language learners. Occupational education, this is where you'll find our CTEC placements over at BOCES. And it also includes our own programs such as technology, the business department, and family and consumer science. And also evening high school. We have a high school, an evening high school where we have the instructors as well as a principal and a clerical person and their supplies. Instructional media covers the library costs. This would be the library books and supplies as well as salaries, and it also includes our technology department. This is our technology director and his staff, all of our software and our equipment, and this is for the students' use. And last but not least is pupil personnel services, and this is everything to do with servicing students. For example, our nurses are in here, social workers, psychologists, guidance counselors, and we also have our extracurricular costs in here. That's for the clubs as well as athletics. These are the 5 sections of the budget as compared with our current budget for 24-25. And we have our typical increases again throughout here for salaries and BOCES. We have projected increases. I do have some BOCES increases I have not finalized yet for cross contracts. So for curriculum and development and for teaching regular schools, we do have some small percentage increases. Again, there's your typical salary increases and BOCES services. Special apportionment, we do have a 16.2% increase or $2.8 million. And the driver here is 24 students projected to be moving into the, or not moving in, coming into the district next year that will be placed in BOCES. Last year, we had 16 students that we budgeted for, that we expected going to BOCES. So that's a big driver here. We also have 2 students that will be privately placed that I've budgeted for. Last year, we did not anticipate one, so I have to not only budget for a new one coming in this year, but next year as well. So that's the driver for the 16.2%, just to give you an idea. Again, last year we had 16 more as compared to this year anticipated. Instructional media, we have a 14.2% increase, and the driver in here is our BOCES services again. Wherever we have had software throughout the budget that we could purchase through BOCES, we have moved some more again because we do get aid back by purchasing it through BOCES. So I do a cost benefit analysis to see, is the rate higher through BOCES? And even if it is, do we still get more aid back and it's net cost less than we're paying? So that is the case in here. But we also are subscribing for a service to assist us with cyber protective services. So that's going to be an increase in this section of the budget, but it's going to be through BOCES. And again, it will be BOCES aidable, which is very helpful. And then we have pupil personnel services, and the driver here is our typical salary increases. Our total increase for the instructional section of the budget comes to a little over $4 million or 7.9%, whereas last year we had a 5% increase in this section of the budget or $2.4 million. taken those 5 sections and put them in a pie chart for a visual so that you can see where the bulk of the money is spent in the instructional side, and it is under teaching at 42.4%. Our special apportionment is the second largest section at 37.6%. And this section has been growing over the past 2 years, and it's getting closer to the teaching amount of percent spent. Our smallest amount here is instructional media. Now, here are the expenditures that we spend throughout the budget and on the instructional side, and the comparison with the current budget and the proposed for 25-26. This budget has been built with no new positions added, and it also is not including any requests from principals and directors at this time. I also do not have any attrition in the budget under salaries, but I do have breakage. We do have 9 retirements in the instructional side, and that breakage totals $566,513 and is reflected in the $1.8 million increase, which is 4.9%. Last year, our increase in 24-25 was 2.1%, just to give you a comparison. Equipment, we are keeping flat for next year. Contract services, we do have a very minor increase here, and that is for the local share of the UPK. Supplies, I've gone through our historical review and was able to reduce supplies slightly by 2.3% or $15,000. And then you can see our BOCES services increase. And again, the driver here is the cybersecurity and the additional students that we must budget for that we're anticipating next year. Our total increase of 20.4%, when you compare it to last year it was 16.5%. And then we have other, under other in the instructional side of the budget, that's where you'll find the software expenditures and the tuition for students that are placed in private placements or residential in the special ed section. It also could include if we had any students from our district placed in foster care in another district, we would have to budget for their tuition as well, because we are still responsible for their education. And that increase is 11.9% overall. And the driver in this case is the tuition for special education placements. And I took that information as well and put it in a pie chart for a visual. And you can see salaries make up the majority of this section of the budget. And that is typical. Usually a budget has about 80% salaries and benefits making up the bulk of it. I think now I turn it over to Mr. Carter.
Right, good evening, everyone. So as you see, we have what we propose as the program funding through our budget this year. We broke it down by our buildings and also included a district-wide slide. So I won't read that to you, but rather just speak in general about Goshen High School to begin. So when you talk about your preparedness for graduation, we've sat here and discussed Blue Ribbon Commission often enough to have a comprehensive understanding of what we assume is coming our way. And so a large part of what we wish to do with Goshen High School is to continue to explore those performance-based rubrics and tasks that would allow us to give student opportunity to demonstrate proficiency that they seek. This may include some new CTE programs. So for instance, Mr. Pantaleone and I have had discussion about moving forward with a CTE in an individual arts assessment. And so students who are heavily involved in music, the visual arts, media arts, et cetera, will have an opportunity to pursue a pathway to demonstrate proficiency toward graduation, which may turn into acquiring a seal on their diploma in the future. Also, we've put a great amount of money and time into our professional development in the area of science. And of course, we're going to continue to do that because as many of you are aware, the last administration of the bio and the earth science will be in June of 26, which means that we'll move wholeheartedly toward the new assessment in the next administration year. And then also, we want to be prepared for the new administration of the chemistry and physics. That overlap of standard and assessment that aligns most closely with instruction is going to sunset, and so the new administration will be required, and we want to be very prepared for that. So we'll continue on the path with our professional development. And then you see ongoing collaboration with professional development and opportunities. And so we want to continue with all of the agreements we have with Siena College and Syracuse University and Ramapo, but we also want to look for ways to expand. For instance, today, Dr. Coates and I had a discussion about the new seminar style AP English that may be offered in 10th grade, potentially as a student's first AP course. And so continuing to look for ways to expand opportunity is important to us. And this is all on the horizon, working with our faculty and staff at GHS for next school year. Moving into CJ Hooker, you see much the same. There is a need to continue with our professional development with next generation of standards, or rather P12 standards in New York State in the area of science. We want to make sure that our Project Lead the Way and other materials are aligned. We have done a decent job of moving out and offering supplementary materials. And so we did purchase BioZone to be used in the Earth and Space Science, but I think we have a need to pursue some supplemental materials for next year as well. And then eventually we'll wind up opening up to a full search committee for some new textbook series throughout. Also, just wanted to mention that grade 6 and grade 7 are somewhat updated in using digital format texts through Savas, but those will come up on a replacement cycle. And so we'll have to continue to take a good look at that and prepare for a replacement cycle in that content area. I do believe that we have to take a deeper look at our social studies materials. So again, the materials that we are currently using are coming up on a replacement cycle through Pearson and also through Savas. You know, we're looking at some materials from about 2019. And so usually we come up on those replacement cycles in that 5-6 year period. So we want to be prepared for that. As we move into the Goshen Intermediate School in Scotchtown Avenue, of course, we're speaking of K-5. And so we want to make sure again that we're continuing to work diligently to align what we now have as our core program, right? Project Lead the Way. And we also want to explore some supplementary materials. As you know, we had a great professional development opportunity last Thursday. And again, part 2 is coming up. And we've had some great discussions with grade bands and individual grade levels about what they'd like to see within this content area. And so even in working with Dr. Wentworth through our budget presentations, we're developing a better idea, which I think is very important, a better idea of what our teachers would also like to see to assist them in preparing not only in the content area, but also some of the more rigorous testing that we're seeing. And so we'll continue to do that. And then also we're looking to bolster our writing program. So as you know, Scholastic Literacy, we did purchase a rather comprehensive curriculum through Scholastic. And I do believe we're having success with it. And I do believe that our teaching staff likes it an awful lot. However, I have heard that, you know, we could probably use some more supplemental materials to help us writing. And so in correlation with some of the social studies work that we hope to put forward, I do believe that we can prepare our students better in the area of writing, especially across curricular areas. And again, the current social studies materials that we're using are module-like materials through Putnam, Northern Westchester, and we do wish to look toward a more comprehensive program, K-6, in that content area. So that will also be on the horizon. And then the district-wide goals are rather straightforward. We do want to continue offering the opportunity for our teachers to complete summer curriculum work. We do want to offer the opportunity to continue to go out to conferences, and to continue to take advantage of professional development that's offered in-house through BOCES and others. And we want to continue to collaborate to explore additional pathways to provide students with opportunity to pursue different pathways or pathways that are very important to them. And so that is what we have by way of grade band, buildings, and district-wide goals through program funding. When it comes to the district-wide grants, we do in-house apply for Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV. And we also receive an allocation for UPK. And so these are federal grants. As you see here, we'll continue to monitor this closely. We do have our allocations for this school year as we've been approved for all of those grants. And so I don't think acquisition of the funds for this current school year is an issue, but we will continue to monitor to see what may come out by way of the federal government. And that's what we have for district-wide. I'll turn this over to Dr. Coates.
So enrollment is always something that we have to watch very, very closely, and I would have stood before you the last 2 years and said that we have not had large deltas in our enrollment, plus or minus a small percentage for the last 10 years. But that is beginning to change, and it's beginning to change significantly, and it's something that we have to watch very closely as we graduate classes of anywhere from 230 to 250 in the high school, and we're bringing in kindergarten classes that range anywhere from 165 to 180. It has significant impact on class size, it has significant impact on student need, and it has significant impact on how we staff our buildings. And it's really something that we're going to have to monitor. There's not a real good correlation between housing starts in the community. I've had conversations with the town supervisor, and there's a lot of housing starts starting right here in Goshen. In the past, that would have indicated that we were going to see population increases. But if you look at the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, what we're starting to see is smaller families in the country. And I think this is a result of not seeing households with families with 2, 3, and 4 children, but rather 1 and 2. And that is starting to be reflective of what is happening to our enrollment. And I don't think we're dissimilar from a lot of districts around the county. Again, we'll have to watch this very closely moving forward, trying to make adjustments through things like attrition, being careful of class size, and making sure that students continue to receive the services that they need. So I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. This is the summary of the major changes in the instructional section of the budget. We have our increased costs for salaries. This is contractual and typical increases. But we also have decreases, and that's because of the breakage for our 9 retirements on the instructional side. Again, that number is a little over $566,000, and that is recognized in the budget. Contractual, that is the UPK local share increase. Supplies, that's the historical review that we were able to decrease that a little bit. Then we have increases in OC services and tuition, and then our increases in tuition for our private placements. And just remember, this is still a work in progress. Ready for the next one. Okay, so here is the total proposed budget at this time. And our total increase is $5,006,023 or 5.4%. Last year, our increase was a 3% increase, but remember, we did pull out 1.1 million in capital work that was in the budget originally, so it's not as big of a gap or difference as you would expect. And we have our proposed revenue. We don't expect much more revenue. However, this number is not finalized until the budget's adopted by the state. This includes the 2% foundation aid increase, which was $424,000. And our total revenue increase is projected to be $663,000. Our budget projection is $96.8 million, which leaves a gap of $5.5 million. And remember, it's still work in progress. However, our revenue is not obviously keeping up with our expenditures. When you're only getting $663,000 in a revenue increase, yet your expenditures are growing, it's very hard to keep up with that. And so what are our options to balance the budget, the proposed budget? We can increase revenue, however, that is difficult to do in a school district. We're not a business, so we can't increase production or increase sales. We're really limited. We get our aid from the state, and then we can levy taxes. So our tax levy cap is projected to be less than 0.5% for 25-26, and that's with no capital work. Capital work is one of the things that we can use as, or can include as an exclusion in the calculation. So if we were to include some capital work, which we discussed at the last meeting or in presentation, that levy cap would increase to 1.84%, and it would still be within the cap. You can also appropriate fund balance, which we have done historically in this district. Currently, we're at $1.2 million, which has been, I think it was 2 years ago, we appropriated 1.2
We were under a million.
Yeah, historically, you were at 900,000 for many, many years, so it's not, it hasn't grown exponentially, so. But just remember that it is a temporary fix. You do have to have the means to put that back. It's sort of using a credit card to pay your bills or using your savings account, but it is always best to be able to put that back. You can also appropriate reserves. And an example of this is we have budgeted for employee retirement expenditures in the non-instructional side of the budget. So I have $300,000 in there as an estimate. If we were to have that big of an expense, or even if we had under that, we could appropriate $300,000 out of our employee benefit reserve account to offset that cost in your benefits, on your expenditure side. Another option is to reduce spending. Since benefits and salary make up the bulk of our budget, the quickest way truly is to reduce staffing. And I've listed up here the instructional side of the budget, the positions that, and their costs. For example, teacher assistant, teacher aide, and an administrator. This includes the average and their salary with their benefits. So that's just to give you an idea of what each position would cost and on what step for the teachers that would be on. And of course, there's any combination of the options listed that we could do. And of course, we can also look at attrition before reducing staffing. Attrition is where you don't replace positions for people that are retiring. Again, we have 9 positions retiring this year on the instructional side. I wanted to put a history of the tax levy for the past 10 years in the slide presentation for you to review, just to see where we've been with the increases or not increases. And as you can see, we've been at the cap until the 21-22 fiscal year, which is when foundation aid was also fully funded. So it's understandable why you did not go to the cap during these years. But now we've reached that point where we aren't going to be seeing those increases that we did at that time. So we do have to consider what we're going to use moving forward. So as a levy cap. And that's mission statement as always that we close with. And if you have any questions, who to contact. Do you have any questions from the board?
I just have a question. In December, I believe we talked about, there were several positions that were being requested from the administrators and different buildings, new positions. So this budget you said does not include any of it.
It does not.
Have there been discussions with the administrators so that they're aware that that's not, is it something that's not being considered to be put in the budget at all?
Right now, it's not because, unless it is absolutely needed, which we're still waiting to find those numbers for.
Okay.
For example, of what we will need coming in for kindergarten. And we always have to consider building contingencies in for different reasons, so that's another thing that we have to build into a budget. For example, if we were to get more special education students than we have budgeted, it's always good to have 1 or 2 in there in case there is an influx of more, or kids can move from another district in here too. It's hard to plan for those things.
I would just like, I know we'd asked previously for the data and the justification for why those requests were made.
Yes.
Just because even if the funding's not there, I still think it's important for us to understand why these are being requested and what do we need to do to make sure we're still meeting our students' needs despite the funding concerns. So I'd still like to see that information.
Makes sense, because they all have a program that they want to run and they want to run it the best that they can.
Right.
That's absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Has to be considered.
I'd be curious to know you know, in the presentation about how we can bridge the gap. One of those is cutbacks. And so the first thing is salaries. It's this much of the pie chart. It's massive. But I'm curious, you know, what type of analysis have we done or can we be doing to evaluate some of the services and, you know, other areas where there might be inefficiencies in spending or possibly waste. I can't imagine putting all of this together for all of the facets of our district, but if you go to any individual area, like, all right, in your department, where do you think we could tighten up? And if we found 50 grand here and 100 there, are there services, you know, you talked about curriculum, Mr. Carter, from a general big number standpoint. Is there something we're not using? We can start, you know, so I guess my question is, considering other types of areas where we can cut, be more efficient, you know, get rid of services that, I'm not saying, you know, specifically like a student-oriented service, right? I'm not saying cut that, but something that really isn't so useful, right? What are those other areas
So-
that can be considered?
We're all going to do that collaboratively, but just to give you an example, we have already done it in some cases. For example, Mr. Rediker went through the software utilization throughout the district. There's a program that you can run, correct, Jonathan, that shows what is being used. So if it's not being used to the best fulfillment, then we have looked at that. And it doesn't add up to a lot of money, but it's a start. You have to start somewhere. And we look at everything throughout the district to try and find efficiencies. And I would say for the past 3 years, we've done this. And now it's just reaching the point where we have to do that. And we also have to consider the enrollment declining. You know, we have to look at everything. I would say classroom sizes and services. And is some service a little heavy in an area, as you mentioned, and not heavy enough in another area, or there's not enough? We have to definitely consider.
And I think hearing about that, right, just that talking example, you spoke to Mr. Rediker and it was analyzed, the usage of the different programs. And we found, you know, it's like those subscription services, everybody has 15 and you use 2.
Right.
So whatever format, you know, you all feel is best to deliver that information, I personally would find it helpful to know that these areas were all investigated and in this manner, and this is what we came up with. Not to make these presentations more than they are, but I appreciate that info. Just knowing that's happening, where it was looked, how it was looked, have a little bit more confidence in knowing really went through it.
Because you also, although we are a school district, you have to look at your return on investment and you have to look at your cost benefit analysis. And that's what we do. And we will be looking harder.
On the same topic, last time at the last presentation, you talked about BOCES with busing. I asked about if we had analysis of what we saved by doing it in-house.
Still a work in progress, actually. I do have the runs that we've taken back, but I have to calculate the salaries and the savings and the mileage and the wear and tear on the buses. And I'm also waiting to hear back from BOCES on what that cost would be right now, because the contracts have been put out, I think, every year for the last
Rebid again.
3 years, yeah. And each time it has gone up quite a bit. So once I have that amount, I can let you know. And I will have a spreadsheet, or I could probably send it to Dr. Coates to share with you.
Thank you.
And I just wanna, I completely agree with what Shannon was saying, and just what we're looking at is making cuts, but yet we're having feedback from administrators saying that we need more. And so I think that it's really important for us to be able to see how to bridge that gap. I know we're also waiting on reports from the special education analysis, and hopefully that will give us feedback as if as a district, we're appropriately meeting those needs through the special education department. Do we have enough school psychologists? Do we have enough? So all of that, if we're looking, we have to make cuts, but we might need more, so we have to kind of figure that out.
Exactly, and it's nice to have that assessment done outside the district as well, because then you have another opinion of what our needs are as well.
I think too, over the last 12 months, we've had some community outpouring for additional services or additional curriculum. So I think that, it'd be interesting to see how the administrators' opinions align with what we're hearing from the community. And I think that if we're gonna go to the community with a tax increase, it would be nice if we were potentially including something they've been asking us a lot for, so.
Yeah, and I agree with everything that's been said, and when you talk about tax increase, if you just look at these last numbers, I mean, to make up that deficit, you're talking about a 10% increase, which is huge. So I think we have to really weigh, you know, look for examples of waste, in the analysis that Ashley just mentioned. There's also, I think, talk about throwing additional codes to get more money from insurance, from PPS analysis. So I really think we need to look at extra income, waste, and really see what's needed. And then maybe a plan, and imagine from you guys, on how best to narrow this without just increasing taxes.
I'm sorry, just one more thing I was gonna add. You know, there was a brief slide about grants. I know it's a process and a half and it takes a lot of time and resource to chase grants. Is there more we can do to chase some of that money that's available out there? There are so many different areas that we might be able to tap into.
A question along the same lines, so you could probably answer them both at the same time. I know in my business for tax credits, there's often services that will go through the entire process for you. Contingent, of course, on results that they're getting a fee. Is there that type of service for grants? Or there's where the companies can just hunt grants for us?
There used to be through the Cap Region BOCES. Is that still an option?
It's not widely used anymore.
We'll certainly look at what we would qualify for. We always have to look at our free and reduced numbers for lunch, and a lot of times we don't qualify because of where we land with that percentage.
I do think Rockland BOCES might have put something out where they have an in-house grant writing that you might be able to subscribe to. So you might want to look into that. But one of the things that, you know, when Ashley started talking about the special education report, one of the things that we have been talking about to add, you know, more so with this budget, I know that there's nothing new in this budget, but focusing on multi-sensory reading programs and people who are OG and Wilson certified, you know, so I understand why that might not already be in the budget, because it's looking pretty tight right now. But knowing that we have been discussing this as a community, especially on the special education side, from the SEPSA, from the board, I do think that we shouldn't lose sight in yet another year of our students needing these services and us saying like we don't have enough qualified people for this. So at some point, I think we do need to kind of bite the bullet and see those numbers, those staff numbers in here. Because I understand why you're presenting it this way, but at the same time, it's another year of the budget season. And we still haven't seen those students being served.
Just one more question, I can keep up and I think of other things. I know that there are certain services or subscriptions, for lack of a better word, where we can receive funding back through BOCES, aidable, right? That's the right term. So do we currently have services that are not aidable but could be if we went a different route? Are those considerations that we've made? How many of those services, if any, fall into, you know, our current contracts, and is that a way we could kind of recoup some funds?
So whenever we do look to purchase a program, or a software or a curriculum program, I always ask, is this a BOCES aidable item? I check the local BOCES to see. Or sometimes the vendor who is providing our service for whatever we're subscribing to says, oh, I participate in Nassau's Suffolk BOCES. And so we do a cross contract for that, which is great whenever you have a vendor that lets you know right up front. It's awesome. And typically they will. Once in a while I've come across some that don't realize it. And I'll say, I think your BOCES aidable, only from experience and networking with ASBO people as well in other districts. So whenever we have something new come to light that we need, yes, we do inquire to see if it is a BOCES co-servable item. Also, staff is in some cases aidable through BOCES. If we were to add a position, as long as it is a shared position with another district, they can apply to the state and get approval for that service, and that becomes aidable as well. So I think as districts look to find efficiencies, more and more we may find that occurring, but we always ask. At least at business officials meetings, we bring it up. Do you need this? Let's share it, you know? See if BOCES can hire that. You want to add? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just finding out where we left off here. Dr. Coates, I think that may have wrapped up everything in your report.
Yeah, so just in summary, again, we do not have another formally scheduled budget presentation for next week, but this feedback was very, very helpful for, I think, the three of us tonight in preparation for our next meeting in February, to be able to start to put some of those proposals and some of that data that was requested in front of the board, so that we can start to work towards finalization of what the budget would look like for 26 proposals to the community.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If you don't mind, before we move on with the next agenda item, can I just go back to your second point of your presentation this evening, after your quick question? You were giving the update regarding the cell phone and the possible legislation that's looking to pass, and the avenues we're gonna take, the good feedback. The question was, do we have any insight from the state side of things on what a timeline might look like, where they're trying to push and actually pass this bill?
So the governor released a proposed set of language to the public for consideration. I would guess that she would seek, as she has done in the past, to include this in her budget proposal, so that when the legislature hopefully reconciles the legislative portion of the budget with what she has proposed, that would be a portion. So I'm guessing that in the May timeline, that it could potentially be signed into law if it was forward.
Great, thank you. And then the first step preparatory to that will be to put together a letter of advocacy to say, you know, more localized decisions.
One portion of the work that we would look to do with the community.
Great, thank you so much for the clarification. Sure. All right, any other questions? All right, fantastic. Moving on then to our next order of business, our Assistant Superintendent for Business Report, Ms. Lorraine Van Lammery.
So tonight in the board packets, we have the month of December for your financial reports. Our expenditures for the month of December were $7.2 million. We received general aid, $451,000, bullet aid, $50,000, lottery aid, $146,000, and excess cost aid of a little over $1 million. And our interest earnings for the month of December were $111,000. Our total expenditures as of December 31st were $37 million, which is 40% of the total budget spent, and is in line with where we were last year. We earned $68.8 million in revenue as of December 31st, or 76% of our anticipated revenue, and is about 2% higher than where we were last year.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, moving on then to our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum, Instruction, Personnel, and Technology Report, Mr. Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Loftus. Once again, good evening, everyone. Two quick updates for the board this evening. So we did receive notification from NICED that we will be participating in the NICED slot field testing that'll be coming up in March. And so the C.J. Hooker Middle School has been selected, and also Goshen High School has been selected. So we will be taking the listening portion at C.J. Hooker and speaking portion at the high school. And so now we will begin the process of actually programming the MetroTech system for that computer-based testing. We'll work closely with our administrative team to ensure that that happens. And then also, as you heard us mention, the CTE pathway, specifically in this instance, our cybersecurity and computer technology pathway is up for reapproval. And so I've reached out to Mr. Pantaleone, and I have had a meeting with representatives from NICEAD in the department that handles CTE reapprovals. We're going to begin that process, beginning with a self-study with our interior team here, our internal team, including Mr. Pantaleone, business education teachers, also our tech ed teachers. And there are a few steps that have to be taken there, starting with taking a look at your current sequence, taking a look at employability for those students that do complete that. We have to take a look at our post-secondary articulation agreement, which in this case is with Sienna. So there are a couple of steps to take there. And then once we get beyond that point, we go out to an external committee review, looking at industry standards and collaborating with those who are currently in roles within our community that could possibly employ those who come out with cybersecurity and computer technology credentials. And so we will begin that process shortly. Keep you informed along the way, and that will conclude my report this evening.
All right, thank you very much. All right, moving on, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Billy and Shannon. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education accepts the retirement of Grace Macaluso, school secretary, effective August 29, 2025. Ms. Macaluso has been with the district for 23 years. Be it further resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education accepts the retirement of Joanne Donovan, teacher aide, effective June 30th, 2025. Ms. Donovan has been with the district for 19 years. Be it further resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education approves the remainder of the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, good luck to you both. Moving on, I need a motion to approve policy updates, second readings, renumbering, renaming, readoptions, and retirements. Brett and Scott. Be resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education approves the second readings, renumbering, renaming, and readoptions of the policies as presented. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Need a motion to approve the minutes for the regular meeting. John and Ashley. Be resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education approves the minutes of the January 15th, 2025 regular board meeting. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Need a motion to accept the recommendations of the Committee of Special Education and Committee on Preschool Special Education. Shannon, Scott. Be resolved that the Board of Education hereby arranges for the special education programs and services based upon the recommendations made for preschool and school-age students with disabilities by the Committee on Preschool Special Education, CPSE, and Committee on Special Education, CSE, during the period December 5th, 2024 through and including January 27th, 2025. And directs the district to arrange for the provisions of said special education programs and services to such preschool and school-age students with disabilities as recommended during such time period by the CPSE and CSE. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Need a motion to approve ratification of 3012-D hardship waiver. Ashley, John. Be resolved that the Board of Education hereby ratifies the signing by the board president, superintendent of schools, Goshen Teachers Association President, and Goshen Administrators Association President, the SED's undue burden independent evaluator hardship waiver certification covering the period July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Need a motion to accept restitution payment and increase the budget. We have Billy and Shannon. Be resolved that the Board of Education of Goshen Central School District accepts a restitution payment in the amount of $1,500 for property damage recovery. Be it further resolved that the Board of Education authorizes increasing the 2024-2025 budgetary appropriations by $1,500 and appropriates these monies to account code A162142907. The offsetting revenue account code A2690 shall also be increased by $1,500. All those in favor? Need a motion to accept donations from the GIS PTO with Ashley and John. Be it resolved, the Board of Education does hereby accept with appreciation the Goshen Intermediate School PTO donations of a golf cart, television, and picnic tables for use by the teachers, staff, and students of Goshen Intermediate School. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Need a motion to approve the district authorized representative, New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. John and Scott. Be resolved that the Board of Education hereby appoints James McCardle as a Class A/B operator and authorized representative of the Goshen Central School District in matters with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, effective February 3rd, 2025. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Need a motion to approve the agreement between the district and employee number 02032025-1. John and Brett. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the provisions of the agreement between the Goshen Central School District and employee number 02032025-1 as presented to the board at this meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Need a motion to approve the agreement between the district and employee number 02032025-2. Ashley. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the provisions settlement agreement between the Goshen Central School District and employee number 02032025-2 as presented to the board at this meeting. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Need a motion to accept donations of musical instruments. Billy and Shannon. Be it resolved, the Board of Education does hereby accept with appreciation the donation of a piccolo drum and hi-hat cymbal by Jerry Gavin for use by the Goshen High School Music Department and students of the Goshen Central School District. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. On that. Any board member issues that anybody would like to discuss? All right.
I don't have an issue. I just wanted to make a comment. So I wasn't able to attend the last meeting, and I know recently that Mr. Isaacs in the high school concluded his career and was the person who had a huge impact in my life. As a teacher, as an adult, was often counsel for me, especially during my process of becoming a board member. So I just wanted to wish him good luck and sincerely say thank you for the impact he's had on my life and thousands of others. So thank you.
Thank you. I had just a couple of quick points, 2 comments. We were just talking about musical instruments and just recognition and congrats to all the students from Goshen who participated in the All County Music Performance. Goshen had another wonderful turnout, which is just a testament to all of our music educators. So great job, everybody. Second comment I had, Maureen, thank you for getting all these digital files in our Google Drive library organized. It would be helpful, I think, if we can maybe have a folder in our library where we have our contracts to also have our building condition survey and maybe our 5-year plan with reference, if you don't mind. And if possible, with the budgetary presentations, if we do have Excel versions of those, that could be shared as well. I think that might be helpful. Just a recommendation. When the student calendar is approved, that would be great to have in there as well, quick access. So those are my comments. And just another point I wanted to bring up to the team. We on the board received, a publication from New York State about these different bills that have passed. And recently, one of the things that came out was the governor's recently passed bill for temperatures within school buildings, maximum temperature. I know that also, I believe it's the property maintenance code has a minimum temperature. And so I thought it might be a good time to address this issue, being that we're still in the cold seasons here with the really hot seasons to come. Considering the information we received from our building condition survey that the architects had put together, we know that our HVAC controls and systems in different buildings are better than others. It might be a good time, I wanted to hear people's feedback on this, to maybe start the analysis process of where do we really have the greatest need for either classrooms that are too cold or starting to take note of those in the summer that might be exceeding those temperatures. I believe, if I read correctly, this goes into effect in September. And then this would kind of lead towards analysis to those questions. We were talking about fund balance. We were talking about in past meetings some capital improvement. Do we have to take a look at the 5-year plan, possibly pivot and consider some updates to HVAC controls so we don't end up putting a Band-Aid on a situation, but also not overshooting and maybe saying replace the whole thing, so just wanted to maybe bring it up for discussion and see what some of the thoughts were and how we can move forward on that.
Follow-up question to that, for Dr. Goetz. In the event that, we get to September, we live in the exact same world we live in right now in regards to our buildings. When the temperatures either exceed or fall below the guidelines, like what is the pivot there? Does it become a closing day, or is it I hate to say this term, is it a distance learning day, like.
So it's a combination thereof. So essentially now we're talking about 3 school buildings because we have one that is fully climate controlled.
Yep.
So we have to look at that carefully in relation to transportation as well. 2 of the other buildings have some areas that have cooling. So I have to work together with the principals on what does a rotation plan look like, because the legislation is very clear about when a temperature reaches, you have to take I'm not gonna try to quote it because I don't remember off the top of my head. One is take some mitigating factors to make it more comfortable. And then there's another threshold that can't be in that room. So I think we have to work together with the principals to look what that rotation may look like into other spaces, because the reality is we have 2 weeks of a hot stretch. I can't be sending home every day, we're gonna run out of time. So it's gonna be a combination thereof. And as Mr. Loftus said, some of those intermediary steps, we're gonna have to codify together with the principals, with the transportation department, food service, to make sure that all of the pieces are in play, so that moving forward, we can address it as a process.
That's my fear, obviously, we're aware of some situations, hitting extremes, and I understand that, but, we just got a budget presentation with a $5 million deficit without adding the services or personnel that people have come here, as representatives of the community, people have asked for, so, does make me nervous now, a huge undertaking in that world as well. So that's why I just wanted to understand that. I know nobody likes school remotely, including me, but I do want to know if that was an option to supplement in the event that it becomes.
So I don't know that we would get to the point of full closure, if you will. I still think that the buildings can be tolerable enough and probably within the regulated temperature to get half days in. It's 2 of the buildings in particular, when we start to hit the midday portion of the day, where the temperature elevates to a point where we probably be looking at the potential of dismissal.
Just so I'm make sure I'm correct, this is another piece of legislation with rules that change how we can conduct business without funding to accompany that, right? So, good luck.
That's what made me want to bring it up, because I think that there's some positive examples of how we've done some strategic
Sure.
planning, gotten some feedback from community stakeholders, give your recommendation and plan some things out properly. And this could be one of those items, where my mind goes is understanding where that real need is. There's a sudden exposure on a second floor that's always 5 degrees hotter than the lower floor, and I can start there, and maybe there's a unit that can be a short-term solution, so. But then I think that's gonna take some real looking at the spaces, the individual, learning spaces, and doing that now in these cold winter months and then moving into the early summer here.
Just keeping in mind, any capital work, it's easily a 12 to 24 month run up before you even start.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
That's one.
Yeah.
Just one more question. So I know for the heat, sorry. I know some of the rooms, I believe, got supplemental windowless air conditioners. Is that correct? Is that enough of a remedy in some of the rooms for the heat, or?
So the answer to that question is yes. They certainly don't cool like a bona fide central air conditioning unit. It will break humidity, it will break some of the extreme heat. What we start to run into is, it would be great to say, well, we'll just buy one for every room. The infrastructure of the buildings won't handle that. The electric infrastructure.
That was my next question.
Just not tolerate. And we even looked at the possibility, Mr. Ryan and I had spoken about the possibility of putting window units in, and the grid in bare minimum 2 of the buildings would not.
All right, anybody else? All right, great. All right, moving on then. Need a motion. to approve executive session. John. Be resolved, the Board of Education will enter into executive session with the intent not to reconvene the business portion of the meeting for discussions related to the employment history of a particular person. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much, everyone. Is that going to carry on to the next section? No.
Ashley.